Welcome to Health IQ. I'm Dr. Alan Siegel, your host. Tonight we have a special guest, Jordan Bledsoe. He's a director of performance at Velocity Sports Performance in Westchester. He has degrees in exercise science and performance enhancement specialty, as well as a golf specialist. Jordan, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So tell me a little bit about your background. How did you get into this training business, and tell me what your passion is for this?
Yeah, so I hail from Dutchess County, New York, where I went to Our Lady of Lourdes High School, and there was a local training facility that I worked out at all through my high school career. And then I played football at Fordham University. And when I was coming out of college, the choices were, to go into the real world or try to stay in sports. And I had an opportunity to go back to that training facility that I worked out in high school and begin performance training there.
So being a college football player, you obviously had a lot of experience in the gym and in the weight room. And how important was that in your education process of learning, what you're doing today, basically?
Yeah, well, football is a unique sport in the sense that, very little of your time preparing for football is actually playing football. So if you don't have that passion for preparation and being in the weight room and being in those early morning workouts, you're not going to make it as a Division I football player. So that kind of laid the foundation for my love of preparation and performance training, and then kind of took off from there.
I think everyone recognizes in the sports world these days that training is really an integral part of any success factor for any athlete. And it's also a success factor for just any person really that wants to get better physically, emotionally for what they do, whether it's they are a professional athlete, a college athlete, a high school athlete, or just someone that wants to be in better condition. But there's a lot of noise out there in the industry, like what kids should be doing, what parents should be doing for their kids, at what age should they start lifting weights. How do you assess or talk to a parent of a kid, maybe a middle school age kid, and how does the process start?
So what we do is we kind of focus on setting some expectations. So we're going to bring in every parent and athlete for a one-on-one evaluation to not just see what they have going on physically, but kind of find out where the parents are at mentally about what they're looking to get from their young athlete. And what they're looking to get from us, because, I'd say 99% of the kids that we work with are not going on to play college sports even.
Repeat that. What percentage?
99%.
99%, exactly. So parents need to understand that this is not about their kid being a pro or college athlete. It's about making them a better person potentially,
right.
and a better athlete for what they're doing currently in the next 4 or 5 years of their life.
Exactly, and to help those parents from the get-go recognize that there's a greater reason you put your kids in youth sports. Right? There's values to be learned there, being part of a team, working through adversity, all those things. You want your kid to stay in competitive sports for as long as possible, even if that caps at 15, 16, 17, 18 when they start making cuts. Having proper performance training to keep them healthy, keep them on the field, keep them competitive at the highest level they're capable of is a highly valuable thing to an asset to have at their disposal. And that's why athletes as young as 8 and 9 years old are coming to us with realistic expectations of what they can achieve with a professionally run performance program.
So how do you do your assessment? Like if you do have different ages of kids that are coming to you, obviously different kids are going to be able to do different things, and maybe you don't start weightlifting or squats or bench press until a certain age. How do you do your assessments with those?
Yeah, so we have a 2-part assessment that we do with every athlete. It's pretty cut and dry. That there's a portion that's for our performance coaches, and there's a portion that's for the parents and the kids. The piece that we're most concerned about is the qualitative aspects. So how well does this kid move? When we're looking at long-term athletic development, setting a foundation for this person to move correctly is what's going to allow them to, one, stay in our facility for as long as possible, stay competitive on the field for as long as possible, but also be able to go on to not have the long-term ramifications of the game they're playing. So we're looking at the quality of movement from their hips to their knees to their ankles, upper body posture, intrinsic core stability, their ability to accelerate and decelerate, very basic human functions. But in our 4 standard tests, the single leg squat, the overhead squat, the Davies test, for a little mobility and core, as well as the LESS test, which has kind of become a standard in sports medicine for precursors for ACL injuries. Those are our 4 standards to really see what the athlete has going on biomechanically.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize that this is a little bit more scientific than just sending your kid to a big box gym where they may grab a trainer and just may kind of put them through some routine exercises or strengthening or conditioning, but not really ever doing the testing component, which I think is critical. As a doctor, objective measures are really important. Range of motion and strength testing and muscle testing and posture analysis. These are all things that we use to quantify and qualify what we're going to do for those patients. So I think that testing is extremely valuable, as you probably can attest to.
Absolutely, and what we try to articulate to the parents, from the start, is that there is a huge difference between fitness and performance training. When we talk about performance training, I used the term before, but long-term athletic development. We are not simply whipping someone into shape for the coming season and then saying, sayonara, see you next year. Hopefully you didn't get hurt, right? We're trying to make, tangible changes to the way people move so that they can continue to train and be a multi-sport athlete and get to their highest level of competition.
So after you've done the assessment, what does a typical program look like with you guys? Is it like a preseason thing? Do you try and encourage your clients to work with you all year round? I find that just from some experience and seeing what my son has gone through over the years is that kids get conditioned and then they get deconditioned. They get conditioned, they get deconditioned, and sometimes depending on what they're doing throughout the year, it's hard to either maintain or stick with these programs. So how do you work with these various types of athletes?
Yep, so that's where we created the quantitative portion of that assessment process. Is we have a set of what we call non-variable tests that try to put a metric to the different pieces of athlete performance. So stability, upper body strength, upper body stabilizers, vertical explosiveness, broad jump for linear, acceleration, speed. And then what we do is regular testing monthly for our athletes to show them progress through the portions of the season that they are most concerned about, like preseason, getting conditioned for the upcoming season, but also help them work their way through the season, maintaining those gains, and then have a year-round performance program that's really structured to not allow them to dip off mid-season.
Now, how about too much training? Like, some kids maybe try and overdo it, or maybe some coaches overdo it. Like, how do you monitor, the overtraining? Not burnout training, but just overdoing it, from a repetitive stress injury situation.
Sure, we have a very detailed preparation process that our staff goes through, and the last portion of that assessment process is a sign-off by each coach. Now, our sessions are written daily based on the athletes that are on the training rosters, so that we can very closely manage exactly what each athlete has going on at different times of year, whether they're in season, whether they're post-season in recovery, kind of rebuilding that foundation, or if they're in a preseason and should be at a very high volume, high intensity to be prepared to go right back out on the field or onto the court.
And do you find that a lot of your training is done with groups or individuals, or how do you think, I always see like a lot of videos, on Twitter or whatever, a lot of team training, especially at the college level. Maybe there's some motivation involved there and a little bit of camaraderie, which is nice to help the kids get through these workouts. Do you find that typically you'll work with various, schools or various teams, try and get them in as a unit together and try and work with those kids?
Yep, so we have a full spread of offerings, right? The idea with our training is that kids have enough other things going on in their life that create limitations, that we don't want our training to have finite rules and structure that prevent them from coming. So we offer private training, we offer small group training, we offer semi-private and team offerings. Really, it's all based off of that initial assessment. So we're able to sit down with a parent and an athlete and determine exactly what the best way to get this done for them. I was talking to one of our Byram Hill tennis players today, who did some group training, has been doing some private training, and private just works better for his mentality. Now, at the same time,
tennis players being a one-on-one sport, sometimes that would make sense, right?
That makes perfect sense. Yeah. Now, I have other athletes that you put them in that one-on-one setting, or even a small group with one or two other kids, and they cannot inherently come up with the energy to sustain that session and get the amount of work done in that training session that we want to. So from that, there are intangible things that we're taking note of within these assessments to try to put the kid in the best position to be successful within our program, not just force them into the one with the highest ticket price or the most convenient place in our schedule.
Okay, so going back to the assessment, and you talk about some metrics and some measures and everything. What are some of the important, like the more important measures that you will look at as the assessment goes on, and how do you keep reassessing with the same measurements, basically?
Yeah. So within the qualitative
what's
portion,
important, like the jumping, the squats, what do you see?
Right. That depends on sport, and it becomes certain things are more attractive to certain athletes, and we try to listen to that, in putting the emphasis within a program on the things that matter most to them, right? That's going to keep them motivated. But what we do for all of our athletes, and this is something that's evolved over the years, is we do a testing combine the first Saturday of every month. And it's open to all of our athletes. We clear the rest of the schedule. There's no other way to train at Velocity on the first Saturday of the month than to come and get tested. And the quote we use, and people laugh at it, and we say that great workouts without regular testing is like driving a Lamborghini with your eyes closed. Right? It's, they're awesome. It looks great. You can put it on your Instagram video. It's amazing. But if you don't actually know what's changing, right, you're driving blind. You're eventually going to crash, and either you're going to peak at the wrong time, or worst case, you get hurt and cannot play. Right? Keeping athletes healthy is the highest priority in performance training. Right? The workout itself is not our competition. Right? What they do on the field is the competition. And so everything we're trying to do is pushing them toward that success, not necessarily getting the highest bench press in the gym, or jumping through the roof on this coming Tuesday.
Yeah, because everything's individual. You may have a very good athlete who is not inherently super strong, or inherently strong. You may have a very strong person who's not inherently a great tennis player, for example, or maybe doesn't do that particular sport or whatever. But there's a role for everyone out there, and they find what works for them. But I would say the basis of your performance is really the work that you do, off season or off the field, because it's going to make your performance that much better.
Absolutely.
I don't think athletes today can really, I don't want to use the word survive, but really get ahead, without these workouts. And then, people stress skills, and you have, baseball community, some of these kids are over pitching, and even tennis, maybe they're overplaying. And, I always relate back to dancers. No one thinks of dancers as athletes, but they dance 5, 6, 7 days a week, 2 hours a day. They do more than most athletes I know. So, and their bodies can break down because maybe they're not doing enough conditioning, because they don't have time because they're dancing.
Right.
So,
and something that's pretty standard education for our athletes is the concept that stability earns you strength, and strength earns you movement. right? So for our athletes, their sport is their movement, right? Everything we're working towards is getting that to be the most sound structure it can be. So at different times of year, at different points in a program, we're regressing to stabilize an athlete. We're working through to make them as strong as we can possibly be. And then ultimately to go out on the field and they're going to pitch, and they're going to have to make a tackle, or they're going to have to block a shot, and they need to be strong and prepared to do that safely and effectively. And our performance training is what's going to do that.
Okay, that's great. So in terms of working with other professionals, physical therapists, chiropractors, orthopedics, if you have a client that has any type of injury or assessment, I think what happens, unfortunately, is sometimes athletes can shut down. They have an injury, they have pain, they have discomfort, and they realize they're like, it's your knee, but okay, we'll deal with the knee, but how do you keep them conditioning so they don't have to regress back 6, 8, 10 weeks based on a knee problem where they could work in their upper body, or vice versa? Maybe they have a shoulder problem, they can still work on their lower trunk. Mm-hmm. How do you encourage those clients?
Yeah, so I think that's probably one of the biggest assets that my Division I athletic career had for me in this business, is being able to see what it means to have a full-time sports performance staff, have a full-time sports medicine staff, have a full-time coaching staff that are all on the same page and all working toward the same goal, but staying in their lanes.
Yes.
So I had a handful of injuries and teammates that had a handful of injuries throughout our careers, and being able to go and get your treatment for the broken ankle, and then head right over to the weight room and have your strength coach be ready to put you through a core and upper body lift to make sure that when you're coming back from that injury, you're not at 0 starting over. Right. You're at 85% ready to put the finishing touches and get back out on the field.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, and I think it's a little harder to explain that to a younger athlete, a kid who's maybe like, kind of bummed that his ankle's busted and it's, September in the middle of just starting his football season potentially, but you have to sit there and look him in the eye and say, hey, look, you're going to be back week 11 or week 10 or week 9, and you don't want to come back at 0, you want to come back as a conditioned athlete. We'll deal with the other issues where maybe you had to regress a little bit, but we can still work through that. And I think that's an important part, having that team effect. And I know you work with us over in Armonk at ProClinix, and that's been really a great team effort. So I think parents need to understand that working with strength and conditioning specialists, working with physical therapists, working with professionals is a nice thing, because they have that opportunity to communicate and to make sure that athlete is as prepared as they can when they are fully cleared to go back to full-time sport for them. So
sure, and having those relationships and that avenue for communication on the same level with the doctors, with PT staffs, to be able to pass back and forth is a huge asset. Being able to speak the same language, in reference to an athlete, is not something to be taken lightly, and it's certainly not common in our industry, as you know. So,
from a physical perspective, how important is the glutes to an athlete and the lower trunk to an athlete? I think what happens in some athletes is they forget about their legs. They're always pumping their upper body, their shoulders, their back even maybe. Sometimes they forget about their back. But how important is the lower extremity from a strength perspective, agility perspective, in your opinion?
Yep. So it's such a common question. An athlete will come in, or I'll get a text in the middle of the night saying, is it legs again tomorrow? Right. And my immediate answer is, we're humans. We walk on 2 feet. Every day is legs.
Yeah, right.
And in performance training, right, we are focused on movement, right? We're teaching people how to move correctly, how to move with as much power as possible. So pretty much everything we do, even if we are working on upper body, is going to be involving the legs, involving the trunk, involving the core. Activating those hips is, one of the first things our kids how to, learn is that band routine. And that's kind of like a deep-rooted part of our culture is that preparation to be able to come in safely and effectively, use their hips and their trunk.
Yeah. And how do you deal with the kids that are like, some are pre-puberty, some are post-puberty, some kids are trying to get stronger? maybe too quickly, some are in a rush, some, everyone has different genetics. So how do you manage, the skinny kids versus the kids that just naturally have a little more muscle? You have to manage everyone's expectations a little bit differently and understand that, we're going to build your body the way your body should be built potentially, and, work with that client individually. Female, male, there's all difference.
Right. So what we do is we have kind of general classifications of athlete. Very rarely is it based on sport. Most of the time it's what we call training age. And everybody's going to have their different goals, but we have our structure of what we know is a must versus what they want. So in our development 1 athletes, we call them, which is the youth or prepubescent athletes, we're working on general movement patterns. And the kid may want to get a stronger upper body. Push-ups is one of our standard tests. The kid will get stronger in his upper body, but at the same time he's going to learn how to use his core, and that's going to have a huge impact on that upper body strength. And also recognizing with those kids and parents that they often don't fully understand exactly what their goal means or what it takes to get there. Yeah, I want to be faster, right, from here to the 40-yard line. Well, what are the pieces that go into that all the way down the line? And educating those athletes and parents is a huge piece of our responsibility as performance coaches, and not just fitness trainers. Is helping them understand how their body's supposed to work, and the mechanisms and along that chain that will help them get faster, help them get stronger, help them get more explosive, and how that full picture is important, not just spot fixing, we call it, the myth of spot fixing.
Yeah, and this can apply, like we said, to really any person that really just wants to get physically better, whether they play a specific sport, even if it's recreational golf. Golf, as a golf expert, we can touch on that a little bit. You see a lot of these guys, and you see them on TV. Kind of looks athletic, kind of looks strong, but I don't think people realize how athletic and how strong these guys really are, or girls, and how their cores are strong and their flexibility. And we'll touch on flexibility in a second, but I'd say that I think any sport, really, going back to any athlete, any weekend warrior, really, for that matter, could benefit from this type of programming.
Sure, yeah. And we've had I'd say recent, but in the last 3-4 years, a surge in what we call our Performance Life program, which is adult training, but it's people recognizing that human function is what's going to help them achieve all the other goals that they have. Right. So whether it's weight loss,
or 5Ks, or weekend runs, or bikes, or skiing, or whatever, tennis.
Right, or not needing to go see a doctor to play 18 holes of golf.
Right.
Staying in human functional shape. And the fact that you don't need put your head through the wall, can't go to work on Monday morning workout to achieve those things. Right. You can play 3-on-3 basketball, you can play 18 holes of golf and still feel good.
Yeah, so your weekend warrior types can surely benefit from this type of program as well.
Absolutely. Everybody played a sport at some point in their life.
Yeah, exactly. We're all athletes, right?
Exactly.
We're all pro athletes in our heads.
Right. That's exactly right.
Now, flexibility. We didn't touch on flexibility. So we talked about strength a little bit. How important is the flexibility aspect of it? Is a component of stretching, or at least you're recommending stretching at home, proper warm-up, proper cool-downs, things of that nature?
Yeah.
Because I think flexibility definitely and injury surely go hand in hand a little bit. So.
Absolutely. Often overlooked. What we do is we designate 75 minutes for all of our sessions. Now, the actual workout is still around, the 50 minutes that most people's training sessions are. But what we do is we designate the first 15 minutes to what we call an activation, and the last 15 minutes to a cool down. That activation consists of SMR rolling, consists of dynamic stretching, and then form running. The idea being that we are looking to stabilize, mobilize, and then lengthen to create flexibility for our athletes, right? So most people don't like to stretch because
Right.
it's passive. It doesn't feel as productive as the other things that they do, lifting a weight or running or the things that make you exhausted. But what we try to do from the get-go for our athletes is educate them on what it means to have a muscle be strong enough to lengthen the opposing muscle. And again, we keep going back to the concept of education. It's really about teaching people how it's supposed to be done, not just what looks best or what can go on their Instagram account. The cool down that we do is pretty unique to the session that they just executed. But what we feel is the key is designating that time. That it's part of the session structure. They don't get to finish their last set, give us a high five, and walk out the door. There's a designated period of time that the parents know they're going to be here for 75 minutes, and really take the time to cool down and lengthen what has become short, and stimulate what has become overactive, and learn a routine for recovery, not just pummeling their body every time they come in the gym.
So with everyone's busy schedules these days with school and demands of practice, if they're in season, and if they're never off season, how do they recommend that you get in to see? Like, is it once a week enough? Twice a week is better? Too much is not good, but like, what is like the sweet spot to really see good results?
Absolutely. So we have what we call an unlimited training structure, right? So the whole idea is to not limit people. But recognizing that there's a lot of different things going on throughout the year. So we try to set expectations with each of these testing events that we do for what this next training period is going to be about, right? What are the limitations that you're going to have in your soccer schedule? You're away every weekend, or it's summer and you're going away to camp for 3 weeks out of July. And set the expectations for what we're trying to achieve this month and how many times you're going to need to be in the gym to achieve those goals, right? Even if the goal is just to maintain the results you got in the last period. So we say for a young athlete, development 1, we're looking to see them at least twice a week. Okay. There's too much of a gap at one time a week for those changes to really take hold the way we want, even right down to the volume of education to help them have their own recovery routine at home. There's just too much.
So you do recommend a little bit at home in between sessions, so they have like a little bit of homework to do. Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay. Do they do it?
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But we at least deliver them to structure and try to be good enough coaches in being experts in working with young athletes to put it in a context that if you're going to give a 10-year-old the homework, it needs to be one thing. Right. With a couple sets, it can't take more than 5 minutes, but you see a massive impact because he's done it 7 days since the last time he saw you.
And the one thing we should touch on right before we run out of time here, because I think part of the home routine and part of the routine that you don't get to see is nutrition. Food and water. What we're putting in our bodies as athletes, what our kids should be putting in their bodies as athletes. If they're trying to gain muscle, how to do it in a natural, healthy, safe manner. There are supplements that are controversial. There are good supplements that are less controversial. Kind of knowing the source, where to work with that. So working with yourself, working with a sports nutritionist, I think is critical. And then having the kids follow it, because we know they're out there eating a little bit of junk, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a lot of high sugar foods, whatever. I think anything that you're doing can only be helped with nutrition. I mean, that's a whole nother show, but I think that's an important message to leave, and hopefully you're encouraging that with your clientele in between. Say, hey, you got to be eating 3,000 calories a day or 3,500 calories a day, or you're not going to gain a lick because you're in session, you're burning all your calories, you're burning calories with me, and you're not replacing them, and you're not adding to them. So it's it's a math equation, as we know. So absolutely, and that's something we're always working on with our kids, and you have to know the athlete you're working with to give them that advice, and trying to help them understand and put it in bite-sized portions. Not excuse my pun there, but put it in a way that they can understand and actually take action on. Not giving them this massive booklet or this meal plan that they don't even prepare their own food. Exactly. That's not a realistic way to approach. You give them like general goals, like, okay, eat as much chicken as you want, eat as much eggs as you want, eat as much protein, whatever it is, you put it, say, those are the 5 good things, eat as much as you want. I don't care how you do it, just get it in your body. So
it's a place to start.
It's a place to start,
the education,
right.
For sure.
And you tell the parents, sometimes the parents don't know either. So like they are the ones feeding the kids the food, and they may not know that they're giving Johnny like, a little too much sugar there, a little less, too much fat, not enough protein, not enough whatever. So
and putting it in a positive context that they can actually take action.
Right. Because I think athletes will benefit from all of that, together. So.
Sure.
Jordan, very interesting. You have 2 places here in Westchester, over in Hawthorne and in Armonk. I think you do a lot of athletes in the area, a tremendous amount of good. I hope parents out there are listening, and I think hopefully we'll see some college athletes, that 1%. But if they get there, God bless them. So
absolutely.
But play for today. Let the kids play for what's in front of them. If it's high school sports, there's a lot of great life experiences, as you said. And if it's not on a team, and you're a tennis player, or you're on a tennis team, or a skier, or a golfer, or a bowler, they got varsity bowling out there. They're athletes too. They need to be conditioned.
Right.
So.
There's value in everything, and being able to maximize it.
Human movement, like you said. So.
Absolutely.
Good evening, everyone. This was Health IQ. We had Jordan Bledsoe from Velocity Sports. We'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.